So I used to design websites for a living, and one of the best quotes I ever heard was, "Good design is obvious, great design is transparent." Well, I'm going to start with obvious. This is an unbelievably gorgeous and beautiful Hollywood Duke-Off Stubby 7-star with the most even and multi-dimensional, multi-curving baffle I've ever encountered. And this baffle essentially accelerates the air, and then it gets really scooped out in the middle. You see that kind of dimple in the center. It's actually much bigger than a dimple, but you're going to see more of that kind of dimple. There you really see it on clarinet mouthpieces. So some instruments you have to go obvious, some instruments you have to go more subtle. But what I'm saying is, if you see a baffle that might look a little bit like this, yeah, it might be a good player, but it depends on the voice. It depends on so many other factors of design. This thing is just so fantastically beautiful, and really one of the most advanced baffles of all time for its time. You listen to Bobby Duke-Off recordings, and you get this eerie sensation because he had the 1940s swing band sound, but he also kind of had a 1980s thing going on. So yeah, that's really incredible. But let me show you a mouthpiece that plays a little better for me. This is a no USA period link, and this baffle is a lot more subtle. Yeah, it swoops in, and then it just kind of levels off there at the end. So it's like the straight baffle, straight rollover, and yeah, I really love how this plays. Better for me for clarinet air. It doesn't have as modern of a sound in a lot of ways, but there's still a beautiful level and attention to detail, but it's not quite as much. So let me show you what a lot of the other link baffles look like. This is a slant signature, no USA, 8 original, and you see how that baffle is a little bit uneven and skewed. Now it still has that thing where afterwards it opens up, and so you can really fill it up with air, but there's still that acceleration going on, and yeah, a lot of good things happening with it. But the craftsmanship is not quite to the level that you see with the Hollywood Duke-Off. Again, I actually prefer how this plays. Well, tenor, sometimes I want a slightly more subtle kind of baffle. I got this from my friend Eric Falcon, and there you can see it's a bit of a shorter baffle as it goes in. But it really scoops out. So this is similar in ways to a Selmer short shank, which is kind of cool. It's really kind of cool. So that one's great. So let me show you how on alto I like it sometimes a little more obvious. This is one of the best alto mouthpieces is a New York Meyer Bros, and you really have this massive ramp that goes on. And that can be great. That can really get the air moving, and then it opens up to a totally open chamber. This thing is amazing. Let me show you how similar it is to my best Barry mouthpiece. My couple of best Barry mouthpieces is a Meyer Bros, same thing, 5, totally original. And oh, look at that ramp. That gets buried to not have any stuffiness, and it just goes. And then it opens all the way up. But you see that ramp, how beautifully open. It just gets the air going. Again, certain instruments need to be more direct, more obvious with the baffle. This is a New York USA that has had some war injuries, but I actually like this one better. This is the very best Barry mouthpiece I've ever played. And you see how it's almost a little more subtle? Like the ramp goes on, the baffle goes on for longer, but it's more subtle. And in a way, it opens up in a way even more. This is the best one I've ever played. Let me compare with the best bass clarinet mouthpiece I've ever played. This is a Lalande, artistic facing, and this is something that you just don't see. The same kind of New York Meyer baffle, but on bass clarinet. And that really brings a focus and takes out a stuffiness to bass clarinet sound. And it's just really incredible. If I compare that to a quality superior period, and it's more scooped out, and yeah, I can use air with it, but it doesn't have that clarity. And again, I'm not saying that it needs that kind of baffle, but it helps on some voices. And by the way, yeah, this G. LeBlanc sometimes have Shedvel mouthpieces stenciled, so that's cool. Let me show you a couple other really great alto mouthpieces I have. This is another New York Meyer Bros for alto, and it's a little more gradual in that ramp, and in a way it's actually better. I do like that very direct one and how it slopes. You see how this slopes and then it kind of goes straight, kind of like that Florida Link. This one's great. This one might be my favorite though. This is a New York USA that's been through some stuff, and it's got a very that baffle design is still there, but it's much more gradual. So I can really use air with this one. It doesn't interrupt. It's still extreme. It still has that get up and go, but it then totally lets the air in, and I really love that one. Here's another New York USA I have. Again, these are like the Phil Woods era, and it's a little less subtle, a little more direct of a transition. I don't like it as much. Still has that very prominent baffle at the beginning, though. This is one of my favorite modern mouthpieces. This is a Ralph Morgan, and you can clearly, obviously tell that it is copying a New York USA, and also elements of the Meyer Bros with how much it rolls over at the tip, but that really does look like a New York USA. Great, great, great mouthpieces. These Morgan Excaliburs are really, really wonderful. Let me show you a couple other examples of different ways to do baffles, maybe for more classical work. This one has hieroglyphs, and it has this really cool scooping U shape where the air just kind of, opens up. So a lot of times you see this on a mouthpiece, and it causes the sound to lose all edge and all definition. But this one's okay. Polar opposite. This is a Java, Jumbo Java, and it's got this massive, almost step baffle. So you see how there's so much baffle there that the air can't really even enter in the mouthpiece. It's kind of creates this ultra bright, modern, poppy, contemporary sound, but I don't like it because I can't use air. Baffle where it's nothing much special. Here's an old AL3, and it's just boom, nothing really interesting going on. The baffle's as boring as the mouthpiece sound. Versus something that's a little bit more interesting of a classical mouthpiece. Here's a Lalonde artistic facing for tenor sax. Well, this is nowhere near as good as my tenor one, but it kind of has a little bit of that scooping out, but not as much. And this gets a darker sound, but there's still some focus. There's still some power to it. If you're really experienced, sometimes you can tell what a mouthpiece sounds like just by looking at the baffle, but it really takes a lot of examples to really guess that. Here's an old Bundy. Some people say these are similar to Meyer Bros, but you see how much shorter that rollover is? It's just a little bit, and then it goes. So you see a lot of modern Meyers have a baffle like this, and it creates a really trite sound. Ralph Morgan wrote a lot about this, and yeah, I don't know. It's okay, but it doesn't have that acceleration that you need. So here's a very unpopular opinion. Here's another slant signature for alto, really early one, and it's a 7. So it's super open. It's all original. Most of these are original. And there's that same kind of tenor baffle. That kind of baffle is a little bit more subtle than some of these alto ones, and this kind of baffle works better on tenor. Not quite as well on alto. I mean, this is a great piece, but in general, it doesn't get quite as characteristic of an alto sound. These are still great playing pieces. So now let's look at clarinet mouthpieces. All right, we're back with clarinet. This is beautiful Henri shed. And there you can see it's a lot more subtle, but there's a lot of, curving at the very tip. At the very tip. And it goes in, but it doesn't go in super deep. But you see that little glowing at the tip. I want to show you just how completely different that is from his cousin Charles. Here's a Charles shed, real Charles, artistic facing, CC stamp, and there's no curving at the tip. It just scoops all the way in. You see how much deeper and more like slide like that goes? It just goes whoop, a clean swoop through. There's no concavity. It just goes all the way through. It's very interesting in this way. And the internals are much bigger, but it's primarily the baffle. It just kind of goes. It's just kind of straight in. Yeah, there you go. Here it just goes straight in. There's no real acceleration. Let me compare with the Henri one more time. Oh, completely different design. Completely different. With that tip, and that's much tighter internals. It's more typical what you see of designs today. But there's that kind of acceleration at that tip. And you see that being more similar, again, to those saxophone mouthpieces. It's a little more obvious that Charles is very subtle. And that's part of the reason why I think Henri designs are more copied. Again, part of the reason why. This is a steel ebonite Bettany CC stamp artistic facing. So CC means Charles Shedvel. And doesn't that look more like Charles with how deep it goes in and it scoops in? And that tip might have a little something going on, a little acceleration going on, but for the most part, it's more similar to Charles. The internal is kind of also more like Charles, and this plays elements are similar to an Henri, but it's more. I think it's Charles work. At the very least, Charles baffle work and internal work. This one is really great. I really like that one. All right. Mellophone, steel ebonite, Eugene Berceau. Now tell me which one that looks like. Yeah, that looks much more like the Henri. You've got a little bit of that acceleration at the tip, a little bit of that glow, a little bit of that concavity, and then it doesn't go in as deep, it doesn't go in as sliding. It's a little bit more direct. And internals are a little bit wider than the Henri, but it's definitely Berceau's internal work. But I think that a lot of what makes the great Henri's work is Berceau's work. So let me show you that the numbers on the Henri, if it can even pick it up. Well, it is a CC stamp, but it actually says patented facing. Not artistic facing, patented facing. Very, very rare. And again, much tighter internals than, and obviously more more symmetrical than the others. All right. This is lovely Robert, Block Robert. Internals are a little bit wider, but more like Henri. And this is some really cool stuff going on. So you see that acceleration at the tip, that ramping at the tip like Henri, but then it scoops in kind of like a Charles. There's this little dimple in the center. Yep. And that is kind of the best of both. And so when Brad Bain launched his vintage series, a lot of people like the vintage Model D because it's kind of in between Henri and Charles. I really love that Robert. I've got a few more, but that's my favorite. This I just got. I need to get a new cork. Very rare Oval Lalande. Internals are very similar to Charles. It has that scooping out there, that sliding, But there's a little bit of something going on with the tip, unlike the Charles, where it's just totally flush, going in. But yeah, that looks just like Charles. So this is where I say either Charles faced this, or he was teaching Lalande, or Charles and Lalande were learning at the same time. But that looks just like the Charles to me. All right, here's a really cool example. This is Woodwind Co. Steel Ebonite. You can't really make it out, but it's Steel Ebonite Deposé 412725, just like the Melly. The internals are very bizarre, and I actually think there's room to work on that. That baffle looks most like Henri to me, and I think you can tell if you compare with that first Henri. There's something similar going on there. Yeah, all of these really play great for me. This is one of my favorites of all time. I'm playing this in a lot of my videos. You might be able to make out H. Fedele. But those internals are absolutely perfect for me. Absolutely perfect. And this ramp, well, it kind of looks like Charles, but it also has that intensity, that get up like that kind of straight in baffle, like Henri. There you really see it. And it also has the narrowness like Henri. And well, you might not be able to see it, but there's actually, even though it's a block 8 shed, which is always a sign of an Henri shed, there's a little C before it. So both Fedele's had this in their hands, and the internals are kind of a perfect blend of both. And the facing was dictated by Donald Montanaro. This is an unbelievable mouthpiece, and it's not broken. So many of these Henri Fedele's I see are broken. All right, so let me compare with this M14 that I had, and you'll see that kind of looks like Robert's work. Very similar. I really love this mouthpiece. And that kind of looks like a slightly wider version of that really nice Henri I was just showing you. Let's compare a few more Vandorens here, just because this is an M30. There's a little bit more scooping out. There's a lot less direction, and that's why these M30s, they might get a nice dark sound, but they don't really project well. Here's an M15. A lot of people like these. I much prefer the M14. There's kind of an Henri thing going on there, but it's not as pronounced. It's not as direct. You see a little bit at the tip there, kind of like Henri, but it just kind of goes in, and it kind of goes in too deep. It's kind of like just a lot less intense version of an Henri, and that's why, I don't know, I prefer M13 or M14, especially M13. Here's a brand new 13 lyre. In a way, I like that more than the 15. There's more directness, but maybe not at the tip, and it still goes in too deep for it to be a true Henri copy, but it gets a darker sound. I really like those internals, though. That really does look like that Montanaro Henri. You know what this is? Yeah. See how that almost looks unfinished as it enters into the chamber? And the baffle is just, I mean, there's some good things going on. There's some kind of ramping up, but it's almost like it's unfinished as it goes in. I don't know, maybe somebody has more of an idea why they do this. The very tip, the very beginning of the baffle, there's some good things going on, but let me compare with the real Diamond. There it is. Diamond. Love those internals. And there's some real intelligence to the baffle. The problem is right there, right in the middle of it. It's almost too high. And so this doesn't take the air like some of my other ones. It gets a smaller sound, and I think that's part of the reason why there's too much material there. It doesn't scoop in like a lot of these other, a lot of the really great ones, the great Fedele's. But still really good, and you can actually see Diamond Ebonite perfected by Vandoren. I love these. Can be great. Here's a wonderful Alexander, Paris. Very small. And actually, the Woodwind Co. has something similar, and some of my other mouthpieces have a very small font. If you see that, that's a really good sign. My earliest pursuits have that. This is a patent process blank. Some really cool, very, very, very immaculate work going on there as it scoops in, similar to Charles Chevelle, very similar, but a little more direct, like Henri, and it kind of has elements of both. Really cool, really cool. Not as direct as Henri, not as dark and smooth as Charles, but a good combination. This, you can't make out the logo anymore, but this is a pre-logo Selmer. Best one I've ever played. Beautiful internals. Tight exit bore, most of the time they're big. And you notice how much more like Charles that is in some ways than the Alexander. It goes in much farther. But the tip has something more like Henri going on. I believe at some point early in his career, Mr. Montanaro played something similar to this. These are really great. Or they can be really great. A lot of times the exit board is just way too big. But, yeah, that's really great. All right. Change of pace. Cicero. Really great Cicero. I have a few videos of when playing this. That's really nice. I do like that. But the baffle is completely different. It's kind of more shallow to me, and that's where it gets some of its power. You notice how much smoother it is, how much more reflection I'm getting, and that's what I really like about these sheds. Is a lot of it. It's a rougher internal. It's Brad Bain talks about it like a golf ball dimples. Anyway, this is a Woodwind Co. 36. This one is super scooping. Lots of stuff at the tip, at the very tip. Very shiny. Once again, unlike a lot of these other sheds, I don't think the work is as good in part when it's that shiny. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on there. You can see it right at the tip. That's not subtle at all, and in a way that's almost too much. But it's a really great mouthpiece, especially for how cheap you can get it versus some of these. Here's something very similar. Here's a Portnoy. Now everybody says that he played a Buffet Chevelle. And actually that kind of looks like that Woodwind Co. 36 to me, except it goes deeper in there. Little bit wide in ways, but it's actually, this is a really great mouthpiece. That's the best plain Portnoy I've ever played. And it doesn't have any facing. I believe he made those blanks in America, if I'm not mistaken. This is a Chris Hill mouthpiece, and I really like this one. Got this one from Eddie Palanker. And so you see how it's smooth like a Charles, but it doesn't scoop in. It's more direct like an Henri. So I definitely think this is an Henri style, but it's not quite as much stuff happening at the tip like that one I had. And yeah, that does look like an Henri on the inside. A good Henri. Again, when I say these terms, there's such variation, even between a lot of the examples I have. It's just a general trend, and then one of them gets copied, and then we think, oh, well, that's what an Henri is, but maybe it was just that example. This is a Selmer. Matson worked on it for Harold Mulch. You can't really make it out there, but he signed it on the side. I've always liked Selmer throat shapes, sidewalls. Matson worked on this baffle, and you see how many different directions it's going. It's because he had different places where he'd work from. There you really see a really nice, almost Charles thing going on with how much it smooths out, and that's so different from stock oval or table Selmer baffles. And there's also a lot happening at that very tip. So yeah, this is one of the best responding pieces I've ever played, and it's really great. And he also shortened it. He shortened the mouthpiece from there and there to make it tune a little higher. This is another mouthpiece that Matson did, and he also shortened it. It's an Ann Arbor. Not the best Ann Arbor I've played in terms of material, but definitely in terms of facing. And there again, we see some of that interesting morphing happening that Matson did. And Matson worked on this one. Really cool stuff there. More direct, like an Henri shed. And I just really like how Matson's work looks aesthetically. You can just look at it taking the air. All right, now we'll go into some that are of the QS period. Here's my legendary Clarinet sax that I have a video on. Very tight for a saxophone mouthpiece. Actually, I really like those internals. And you see this very plain thing happening with a lot of the QS pieces. I mean, it works, but it's just kind of plain. Here's another stock QS piece. A little bit later QS. Not super late, but love the internals. And there's a little bit of a scooping thing going on in the center. There's a little bit of curvature at the tip, but you can tell that this is more rushed than some of these other pieces. I mean, it's good, but it's not. It's a little bit more plain. Let me compare with this wonderful, very early Quality Superior. See how the Quality Superior begins all the way down there. I got from Brad, and I did this in a video. That's a little bit wide for me, but I do like it. And yeah, that baffle's much nicer. You can just see the air spinning down it, so much nicer. And also, he did a lot of good tip work. Yeah, I really like that one. That is one of my favorites. This is the best Yvette shed I've ever played. The only Yvette shed I've ever played with nice internal, nice throat, and yeah, really cool at the tip there, but also all the way down it kind of scoops in. Now, it's more like an Henri there. It's not as scooped out, and it doesn't quite take the air that some of them can, but it's really cool. It's great. All right. Frank Wells. These play very similar for me to a Casper Chicago, and the internals, the baffle does look, in ways, more similar to a Chicago, except maybe a little bit more direct at the tip. Really cool mouthpieces. I really respect Frank Wells' work, and especially his sax work is just legendary. Here's a Clark Phobes Cicero. I don't think he makes this model anymore. So, you see how everything is really at the tip? Everything is really at the tip, and then it's just... but unlike that Cicero I showed you, it goes in much deeper. A little bit more modern. But you see how it's just all really quick at the tip. And so that's unique. I don't really have a lot of pieces like that. This is a Lefebvre. Very nice. A little open at the bottom. That's similar to the Cicero. It's a lot of stuff happening at the tip, but it's much smoother as it goes in. Reminds me in ways of my really nice Charles Shedwell. It's good. This needs a bit of work. It needs a new facing. Almost done. Here's an early Hawkins. This is actually curving up the other way. So actually in ways to Charles, except the Charles is very subtle. This is very immediate the way it curves up. I guess some people might call this an S-curve. I'm not really sure. It's on a Zinner. Really quick. To somewhat early but not super early woodwind co's. Nothing like that other one. This has more stuff happening at the tip. And then it kind of gets a little deep but pretty direct. Versus, I've got another one that's a lot, has a little bit more good work put into it, I think. Yeah. There's some more interesting things happening with that. More levels. I think maybe even somebody modified that baffle. Again, when you can just see the air flowing in, kind of like a water, an air tsunami, essentially. That's what I really think that's a good sign. This is a really overlooked, this is the Masteller. And this has scratches in the baffle, but really kind of a unique thing happening there. Kind of a little bit like a Vandoren, but it plays a bit like a Casper mouthpiece. Good internals. All right. Really quick, I've got a Bettany artistic facing for alto clarinet. Very unique alto clarinet internals, and I don't see a lot of Charles hallmarks there. It's mostly just at the tip, as you can see, kind of like my bass clarinet Lalonde artistic facing, but to a lesser degree. This is the best alto clarinet mouthpiece I've ever played on. I play a lot of alto clarinet, but I've never seen somebody with a artistic facing alto clarinet. All right, Lolo Good Lalonde E flat clarinet. Nice. Kind of looks a bit like Charles' work a little bit, but not quite as scooped out. There's a little bit of acceleration happening there at that tip. But let's compare with, okay, I'm ending with probably alongside that double stamp Charles Henri, my favorite mouthpiece of all time. This is a Charles Chadwell Steel Ebonite, artistic facing, CC. Gorgeous, perfect. This is my favorite mouthpiece ever. Oh, look at, you could just see the air just go right in. There's nothing stopping it. There's no hiccups. There's no vacuum. And once again, at the tip, not really much of a, it's just instant in. Instant in. No acceleration. You don't need it for E flat. It just goes in. You see how deep it goes? I'd almost take a bullet for this mouthpiece. I love this mouthpiece so much. Those internals are just amazing to me. This is the first real Chadwell I ever had, and it's original, and it's perfect, and I hope to copy it maybe someday. I don't know. I wish everyone in the world could play this mouthpiece.